everyone. We are thrilled to be back this week. Here it is, another Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, and that means it's the Death Chicks. The Death Chicks. You know, it's been great because we keep getting some really great feedback, and there's Misty, one of the Death Chicks. And we actually have another Death Chick with us today who's not a formal Death Chick, but anybody that's in this space, I guess, got to be a Death Chick. We'll have to come up with something that's you know, for men who are in this space, although we haven't seen as many. So anyway, here we are, the Death Chicks, and basically what we do on this show is we talk about all things that are traditionally taboo when it comes to death, dying, grief, and loss, and we want this to be a really safe and exciting place. I know it sounds crazy to pair the word exciting with death, but it can be, and I think many more people are kind of coming to that conclusion. But we want this space to be a place where people can come and talk and share, maybe even some really deeply held thoughts, beliefs, maybe even limitations or fears about death and dying. So that's what we do here. I'm Patty Burgess, doing deathdifferently.com, and we have Misty, who I think waved to you just a little while ago, over there up in the Arctic. I love to say that. I don't know why. It seems we're so global here. Just the three right now are global. And we've got a great guest today. I'm thrilled that everybody's here, and Misty is going to introduce Suzanne B OBrien. Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks, Patty. It's great to be with you guys today. Moving forward with the Death Chicks, we notice our viewers are growing, and we're so thankful for each of you who comes and spends time and is with us as we talk about these topics that often are not talked about, and sometimes they're difficult. Today we have with us Suzanne B OBrien, and I'm very excited to have Suzanne with us. Suzanne's doing some absolutely amazing work in New York City and beyond. Suzanne is a former hospice and oncology nurse, and her studies in preventative medicine, exercise, nutrition, transpersonal psychology has all informed her work that she's doing today. And today she is opening End of Life Doula Training and Wellness Center. Suzanne's had her courses, the End of Life Doula training, going for some time now, and it's really exciting that she's going to be opening this new center in New York City on May 1st. Suzanne also has studied Reiki and alternative healing methodologies. Her goal, and this is what has me really excited, is to have chapters of this International End-of-Life Doula Training and Wellness Center available globally within the next 5 years. So the fact that this is getting out there, the fact that she's offering it, she offers her level 1 for free. She just is a heart-centered woman working in this field and doing such wonderful work. On her recent press release, it's noted that there's going to be centers in Albany, Sacramento, California, and Curacao that are set to open in the fall of this year. So, yay, Suzanne! Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you. Perhaps you can start with what brought you into this. Yeah.
Sure, led me to this journey. Well, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction and for having me. You two are both doing amazing work as well, and it's just great to build a community together. So a lot of people will ask me, how did you get started in hospice and everything that's led you to this point? And I often, you know, make a little joke that when I was younger, it's not like I knew or thought necessarily that I would become a end-of-life nurse. But what happened was I was always very comfortable with death. I just, as a child, I knew that at one point, I knew our pets died. I knew that nature died. I knew that people died. So I was very aware of that. And as I got older, and I knew I wanted to do something in a profession, probably in the medical profession, or helping with people. I mean, I'm a very community-oriented person. when I did get into nursing school, I knew I was going to work for hospice. And it was very interesting because my path to my college would be, there was a hospice. And I would be on my way to school and I say, I'm going to work there one day. Not even knowing what really, until it got later on in my field. And I did. And it was actually not that easy to get into the hospice field at the time. And when, on my first day when I was shadowing a nurse, the synchronicity, sometimes you feel a synchronicity in life, and I said, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. It was so powerful. But then what really was the awareness was that even within an end-of-life medical arena, small like hospice, and we know that hospice means 6 months to the end of our lives usually, people still were not talking about end of life or even this word called death. And I said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Again, you have to remember that as a youngster, I was always comfortable with the fact that one day death would be a part of our journey. But when I was in the mainstream arena now, and people were really hurting, and we still weren't addressing that this end of life was in front of us, I said, why? What's going on? So that's what started my whole program and research, and it was quite amazing what I found out.
I bet.
Yeah.
Now, I love that separately together, there's so many more people that are on this version of a journey, and everyone is taking their particular path to this place called death, and we're all getting there in different ways, very interesting ways. And before we even get started, because we talked about the International End of Life Doula Training and Wellness Center that you are putting together, that you're opening May 1st. The word doula, many people don't even know what we're talking about. So maybe we could back up and talk about what is a doula. Tell us how it fits in.
I would love to. So let me just start when I was working in oncology, which is cancer, and also hospice, because I went back into the oncology arena because that's really what they want from hospice nurses. They want you to have an oncology background, and rightly so. I understand, see that path. So that gave me a very broad spectrum of the whole end-of-life kind of area of care. Working with my patients as a hospice nurse, people need to understand that hospice teaches the family how to be the caregiver. And this is something, again, I don't think that people understand because we don't talk about this. They assume that hospice comes in and does all the care. And we are all the support and we manage the care, but the caregiver is the one that's bedside. Remember, 9 out of 10 people want to be kept at home if terminally ill. How do we care for them? So if we don't talk about this thing called end of life, if people don't know how to care for them, it's very difficult to teach a loved one as they're losing their loved one how to understand how to care for them. Almost impossible. So, it was this kind of training in my mind that I said that's going to make the difference, is this skill of caring for the dying. But it was on that trip to Zimbabwe that was in 2012. So I went over to Africa. I had this great opportunity to go to work with an amazing hospice over there and do mission work. Go out with the nurses, go out with the social workers, and I will tell you, that was a life changer. They don't have the resources we have. So we have medication. I mean, they have some, but not nearly as much as what is needed. So we have medications and we have equipment and we have all those wonderful things that they do not have the resources for. But what they did do was the hospice would take the neighbor, train the neighbor on how to care for the dying neighbor and their loved one for the duration of that whole dying process, like a doula. Like that birthing doula. And I said, that is exactly what we need to do here. So doula is actually a Greek word that means non-medical person that gives physical, emotional, and spiritual support to someone else. And I love that because non-medical. This is a skill. This is something that everyone can do. Neighbor to neighbor, community to community. So that's where I loved. And again, the birth of a baby, we prepare for that and we get excited and we do a bunch of things. People who are leaving this world need that same kind of love and preparation and support, but we're not doing it at the other end. So you're taking a word that has a beautiful meaning and also associated with something great and putting it on the other side of things, end of life doula. So that's where that comes.
I love that, and I've always been familiar with birth doulas, and well, not always, but when I first heard of birth doulas, I thought, oh, that is so great because birthing too has been very much medicalized in the recent history, and the idea to have someone there to assist you with the birth that's non-medical was so nice, and the spiritual part of it, and the holistic, the emotional. And then when I've just recently heard about death doulas, I was, yes, doing my little happy dance and thinking it's coming round. We're realizing that, there's a start and there's an end. Now, what happens in between is it's unknown, but we know there's going to be a start and the end. And at the start, there's so much hype and excitement and love and showering of friends and family. And at the end, everyone kind of seems to contract, and they don't know how to talk about it, and they don't know how to be around someone who's dying. And I'm thinking, gosh, if we really want to honor life and live life and to the fullest and honor it the way we get excited when someone's birth, we need to do the same thing at the ends. And I'm yeah.
So it is
that's what it's about. And just to blend into what the other work that you do that I think is so key is that at your training center, it's not just an end-of-life doula training, but you're incorporating the living well part too. And really, if we want to die well, we have to live well. So speak to that a little bit, or anything I said, but I just want to do a dance.
Yes, absolutely. I have this saying about people who are at end of life can teach you everything about life if we would just listen. The wisdom, I call it spiritual eyes, spiritual wisdom. It is such a privilege to be with somebody in that last phase, because there is just this magic that happens that they share with you. They almost have this life review, this perspective, and they have their aha moments, and they are sharing them with you. And what I tell people is it was so fascinating because from different cultures and different religions, they were saying the same themes were happening over and over about what this whole life's journey was about. What was the goal of it? What was the experience for? What were really the things that we're supposed to grasp at, work towards? And I don't mean when I say work, it's not maybe that huge house. It's not that, 10,000 degrees. It's not money. It's something very different. There's a whole connectedness. So the Wellness Center is about living. We talk about these workshops I give are so uplifting. We have so much love and fun during them, yet we're talking about end of life because they're infused with patient stories. They're infused with what do we want to get out of life. So it's beautiful. So there's two main workshops, and one is called Fitness Over 40, and it's not a fitness necessarily muscles and being thin. It's not at all. However, fitness means being viable for life, and so you're a holistic being. You're a physical body. You have mental. You have emotional. You have spiritual. All of those beings need to be nurtured equally, and we don't do that. We don't teach that. We say, oh, let's eat right and let's exercise if we can and have time. What about your spiritual nurturing? And what about your emotional? The things that, sometimes you've grown up with that inner voice as a child. There's just so much to it. So that's fascinating. But the other one, and the one that I really also am very committed to as an outreach, is the forgiveness workshop, because it comes back again and again to forgiveness, because my patients need to give forgiveness and receive forgiveness before they can have that beautiful passing, and it is amazing the transition that makes for people. But let's give it now, or let's see that we can do something with that now. And again, that's a skill. Forgiveness is not just a word, oh, I forgive you. No. It's a skill. We need to teach these skills, and it's a process. And it's the most powerful transformation you can make in life. So, thanks.
I fully agree. When I was in my early 20s, I had a really difficult thing land before me, and after a few months of trying to digest this and swallow it, and it made no sense, I was like realizing how much it was burdening my life and holding me back, and it was like this veil before I was walking through life normally, and now there was this veil. I was a bit in a fog. I wasn't really fully engaging in life. And finally, I thought, enough of this. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to just choose to forgive this person,
Right.
and because I couldn't see anything else to do. So I don't know if I told them or not. I know it's not important. It's just forgiveness is all about ourselves.
Correct.
So actually, I think I did. I phoned and I kind of whimpered out this, yeah, I forgive you. And what they did with it, it didn't matter at all.
Right.
But I did this, and it was huge. It was like this
Good for you.
huge life
It's
transformation. And ever since then, I really notice now when I'm holding a grudge against someone, or if I'm upset about something, an injustice, it really affects my psyche hugely. And it's, the churning and the mind, and I notice it right away. And I'm like, okay, I got to forgive this, and then it's gone, and I'm free and light again. So thank you so much for bringing this into your program. It's huge. It's huge.
Well, thank you for saying that. But again, I'm going to give credit to all this wonderful wisdom that's given to me. And I know there was a reason why, so many people shared stories. But seeing the transformation in front of you with a son and a father who say, I'm sorry, or I love you, when they have had a squabble, and the energy it just is transformational, like you said. But we have so many things that go on in our lives, and I think that's the point of life, is to have these challenges to overcome, to learn. The forgiveness is for us. It's purely for us, and it will set you free because it's all energetic. And so what you can do with a free soul and spirit is limitless.
It's amazing you say that. We were talking a little bit pre-show, Suzanne, about these skills. And I think when you talk about forgiveness, or you talk about nurturing a spiritual, physical, and emotional body, like we say we know these things.
Yeah.
But when we go to enact them without really kind of some kind of training, or a practice.
Oh yeah.
Very clunky, and it doesn't happen overnight, which is why when you say, gosh, why couldn't we back this up into life a little bit? Like we seem to see like the, quote, do or die, excuse the pun, like we've got to do things at the end. But it's so forced, and it's not an ideal opportunity to start the training process. It's really where we want to culminate it. And,
so the trainings are so great because you're helping people to understand how to take care of their loved ones, but you're also teaching them how to live their life, because there's gifts throughout it. Mm-hmm. And time is your most valuable commodity, bar none. So when I talk about that father and that son saying I love you or goodbye and I'm sorry on that last period of time, that last week of life, what if they had done that 10 years prior?
Right.
What would that have manifested? So that's what we want to, oh my gosh, life is short, to hold grudges, we really need to go there. And it's nurturing the four bodies is very important, because we're really experts at being able to squash and compartmentalize little things, put it away, don't even think about it. Oh, I'm not dealing with that. Well, guess what? It bubbles up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and you don't want it to rear its head in a way and come, and it surely will, and it's just not healthy for you. So we really want to say that it's okay and give people that support they need and the skills to live an amazing life and an amazing journey.
And I think what you mentioned too, when you were in Africa, it's real easy to take for granted what we have here. In fact, there's a wonderful film called Life Before Death, which is of the website of the same name. And they go to 11 different countries to talk about what countries have and don't have in terms of access to pain medication and all of those kinds of things, and what people have to do there that out of necessity that we don't have to do here out of necessity, because we do have the pain meds. We do have a lot of the things that can kind of take away that impetus for us to go learn those skills. When we don't have them, we have to do them. And I think things are changing a little bit. I think people are getting a little bit more comfortable. And Misty, even before the show, we were talking about, gosh, there's so many topics and so many subjects I want to hit here. I don't know if I can get them all out. But we were talking about that moment of death. I know you've been there for your mom, Misty. I was there, been there for many people, but my mom specifically. And that ability to love that moment and see the beauty in it is something that feels so far-fetched for so many people. And I'd like to see with your work, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, how you can find that people can get comfortable at that time, at that moment, because we're all going to face it either as caregivers or dying ourselves.
This is very true. This is one of the things that we know for sure. And so let's expand on that and talk about it because it's very important. When I went and did my research on why weren't we talking about this end of life even in end of life areas is because I think we just got so far removed from the death experience that people just haven't seen people die. We are living very, very long now. We're families that live, separate places, so we're not around. So this is kind of a mystery, this thing called death. And we've built up this fear. It's the second leading fear in this country. So we've built up a fear surrounding it, so we think it's horrible and it's everything. Let me talk about a family who just recently went through losing their mother, and she was young. I mean, it was not, well, she was in her 60s, and they were such a beautiful, close family. Supporting them through this, talking about pain medication and what you can expect and how you can make her comfortable, empowering them again, as the doula, as the support. When she passed away, which was extremely painful, they said when they were surrounding her that it was the most beautiful gift they received because she was so at peace and she was so comfortable in her being, and they had said everything they needed to say, and they felt good about their role in it, that even though their loss of that mom's physical body, they look back on this couple of weeks as amazing. And so we just people just haven't had this opportunity, which I think, again, the children, we need to not shield death being a sacred part of the life's journey, because it is. That baby comes out and you're in awe. That person leaves under good conditions, meaning that we've supported them, we're keeping them comfortable, we're there holding their hands. It's beautiful and sacred. And there they go. And you can actually see it. You can see the serenity. It's like, I can't even describe in words what it looks like, and it's something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. So it's very important that we get it and we do it well.
It's so funny that you say that, because that moment for me when I was a volunteer or with loved ones is so inspiring and so important. And I was saying on my Facebook post today, I kind of I was saying, how wonderful would it be if we all had this trained, loving companion to escort us lovingly over to the other side. And I see myself as like a patty baton being handed off to these wonderful people who breathlessly waiting for me. They're just like, my God, she's here finally! And I see that being bridged by a death doula. That's the way I'm going out. I can tell you right now, I'm planning it.
Nice.
I love it.
About it.
Nice.
It's very interesting because I just graduated. I have 3 levels of the End of Life Doula training, and I just graduated the last class. So many of them that I read the exams, and I've worked with them for almost 10 months now. I would have any which one of them be my doula. They are that gifted, and they get it, and I would be so honored. I would I'm picking her, and then I'm like, wait, I would pick her because, and how wonderful is that they're out in the world doing that. But exactly like you said, you want somebody to be with you, to be that companion, and they've got this. They understand what your needs are, and just a soul to soul.
Yeah.
Make sure you have what you need, and to go off into that beautiful light. So I like
and
it.
I think it's a huge gift that just being there, so being trained as a doula and being given the opportunity to be with a dying person, I'd love it if the world would just wake up and see, wow, this is so special. It's such a gift. There's such a there that's really indescribable because we haven't talked about it before. It's there with birth, but I can tell, I can feel a sense it's coming around with death. And I love that you said about the children and having children there, because we fear death, so we have to protect the children, but I think from I have a young daughter, she's 6, and And whenever I've spoken to her about, what in our cultural minds programming is scary or dark, she's kind of like, oh yeah, well. and kids seem to get it. They seem to
Well,
kind of
yeah,
have this sense of life, and
they do.
yeah,
If we
Kids
treat it as
it's
normal,
great.
if we treat it as a normal, natural passage,
Part of the journey, correct. And they know anyway. I will tell you that they know. So you think you're shielding them, and they know what's going on. I have this one great little story that I want to share with you about this case because it was so special. They had this woman came down to live with her son and his family, and they had an 8-year-old granddaughter who was just adorable. This whole relationship, and I got to know them for months, which was wonderful. But my patient was transitioning this one afternoon, and I got to the house and I said to the family, would you like me to wait till your daughter comes home off the school bus to go in? They said, you would do that? Because it was after my working hours, which I don't really have. I said, of course I would. So she came off the bus and we talked, and we went in together and we talked about her breathing, and her grandmother was not conscious at this point, and I explained what was happening, and we said what we could do to help grandma with the sponges and maybe putting a little moisture on her lips, and it was a natural, and she felt like she was helping. And I have to tell you, it was taking that fear again, holding this little girl's hand and letting her ask all the questions, and she did. She asked me a bunch of questions, and I answered them as best that I could and as honestly as I could. And that night, that woman, that beautiful woman, passed away, and they called me in the morning, and they said, we haven't touched her. They said, we want you to see her because what she looked like the day before and what she looked like when I walked in that room was magical. They said, we haven't touched her, and she literally had a smile on her face and was just, asleep there. It was so wonderful. But the children are really important. Let them help. Talk to them. Let them know, because guess what? Their parents are going to die. They're going to, and it's okay. It's even more than okay. It's part of life. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess we see examples of that with children who themselves have terminal cancer, and when you see some of these stories that are very inspiring, oftentimes they're the ones that are helping to care for their own parents and for the people around them to get prepared for their own death.
They're the teachers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the teachers.
They sure are. Those spiritual teachers.
This story somehow triggered kind of a memory, and it's, again, our lack of comfort and familiarity with death. I remember when my mom was dying, and different people had come in to see her at different periods of time, and there were some people, she lived in a retirement community, and there were some people that hadn't seen her because they had just gotten back from traveling for about, I guess a week or so, and she was really they had just gotten back, and she was really, now hours away from death. When these friends of hers, these ladies came in and they saw the change in her, and my mother always presented as a very vibrant person, even at 88, when they saw this change, this physical change. And I think it's sometimes hard to walk in on and see something like that if someone hasn't been there for the entire, to get used to these changes. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just like we were not exposed to it. And they were so shaken. I think she looked fine. It's just that she wasn't responsive. And, we have these pictures of death from the movies that say, maybe you'll say these last few words and the makeup's perfect and everything is there. And it's not like that. But it has its own beauty. And I can tell you, looking at my mother as she was dying, and then when she passed, within those 5 minutes, there was something that happened. Her skin was flawless. She looked beautiful and serene. It was such a change, and I don't know what that is. Maybe you can speak to that clinically. Is something happening?
Well, clinically, is one thing. Spiritually is another thing. And for my, I'm a spiritual person, and I cannot deny the fact that I have been privileged to see amazing things that have no scientific. Well, actually, I've studied a little quantum physics. We won't go there, but it is an energetic field. Absolutely. Believe it or not, we are energy, and where matter cannot disappear, it has to change form. Thus, the body shutting down and not being here anymore, but what about our being? That goes somewhere. And so I really believe that luminous is that all-encompassing light, that spiritual energy that people talk about, that you can actually see on the person at that point. Because how beautiful, is this experience that some of them describe. That's what I'll say. I share with people what I'm being told, and boy, oh boy, does it sound really magnificent. So I think that you're seeing some of that glow.
Yeah, I think it's, not only the energetic beauty, but in a couple of cases for me, I've seen this physical shift that, and crazy as it sounds, I've seen this with all of the animals that I've had to put to sleep, to euthanize, and it was actually even more striking there, where I took in, for example, Hero, my one cat, who had been in kidney failure, and I kept him alive for a while with fluids until he told me it was time to go. We did take him in when at the point where he took his last breath. It's like his physical body just it looked like he was young again, like a young kitten almost. The coat came back, something happened, and I can't explain it, but boy, I love to experience it, because it's just...
Sure. I agree, and I think everyone should have that privilege, because then when we get there and where we won't have that fear attachment to it. I will say one other thing that's quite beautiful that tends to happen. I remember this specific case. This woman had terrible physical pain. She had cancer all over, and it was a big pain management case. As she got closer to her transition, she actually didn't have pain. She didn't even require the medicine. So there is that kind of magical shift that happens, and I love that, because we want everyone to be leaving in this beautiful way. We want families to watch this beautiful, this is their last memory of their loved one, so you want it to be positive. But how does that happen? So something is going on with the body there that's changing, and you can see it, and she's telling me she feels okay. So it's beautiful.
I wanted to ask a question. This is on a little different subject. I know that your doula training, it's helping all of us care for one who is leaving. Is your program, in a sense, sort of like family and friend focused, but patient or client? I guess you might call them clients in this case if they're not patients, but patient centered. In that, what's happening that you see, or your explanation of what's happening to the person who's actually passing, and the care that the doulas, that kind of exchange, what am I trying to say? Are you finding that people who are dying are folks who are ready, and they're helping that doula care for them in that way, whether it be spiritual or physical, or are there some issues with the person who's dying as well?
It really depends, Patty. I mean, the goal is there's these 3 phases of end of life that I talk about, and so you hope that each person can move through the phases to get to that place of acceptance before they transition. It doesn't always happen that way. You want it to. We really strive for that. The real point of the doula training is to, again, the people want to be at home. 9 out of 10 people want to be kept at home. So how can we do that? Now, we have 78 million baby boomers that started turning 65 last year. So if you take that number now, 20% of those 78 million don't have adult children. The children who are the adults are usually the caregivers. So that's where the disconnect for me is that they want to take care of their loved ones at home. Then we have these other people who don't have children, but they don't know how to care for them at home. So that's where these trainings are for neighbors, for family members, for community volunteers, the level 1. I actually usually see that the patient is probably the healthiest through the process, and I say that, tongue-in-cheek, because they are the most okay. Yeah, are there times that they need to process some things? Sure, but they're the ones that are okay. It's the rest of the room that's a mess and scared and frightened. And again, when the stress is really high, you can't be physically present with your mom or your dad at the end, and that's not how we want that end of life to go. So if we can take train neighbors and train people to come in, and we've got this. I know what to expect. Then it can be more like, how are you doing, Mom? Let's have the conversation, instead of, why is she breathing like that? Or what do I do next? Or, no, that's not how we want End of Life to go. So, you know, it's really for all those caregivers so that we can support people to be at home on every level.
And what's your experience with the End of Life doulas who are trained and they're doing their first, you know, live gig or dead gig or whatever we want to call it? No, that was a bad joke. So how are the families? How are the families and the people around this loved one? How are they receiving this? How are they? You know, how do they feel about this neighbors, someone coming into their home, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, for us to be having the level 3 certificate doulas coming in as a profession is really very, very new. So it's been a sprinkled here and there. It's something that is coming forward and moving. How they have received, I think, neighbors coming in that have been trained, community members with open arms. They're overwhelmed. You know, I always talk about how people are coming on the program so late in hospice and coming home. If people knew that there were people in their community and neighbors willing to come that had the training, or even a family member that had the training, I think they'd come so much earlier. When we do come in those kind of situations, they are extremely grateful. There's a bond that forms immediately. This profession as doulas, it's really just starting. So again, it's going to have to be, we had to explain today what a doula even is. So we're going to have to get the word out that there are end-of-life doulas that can be for hire and caregivers. But again, remember that our message and mission here is to have everyone that wants to take that level 1 have that accessible, that every family has at least one person trained, and then they can say, okay, I know the basic training, but let's get a doula in here as well. You know, so we all know about it. So, you know, we'll see. You also have to remember that with End of Life, a lot of stuff rears its head. So you might have that one person dying, but there's 5 family members, and there's a lot of stuff that might come out. So you're not always walking into something that's going to be seamless, let's put it that way. And so we teach the doulas, just like you would teach the hospice nurse, that you take not only the patient, but you're caring for all their loved ones as well. And it can get a very interesting dynamic at times, and a lot of healing, because it's all sort of whipped up. Sure. But for the most part, people are just so grateful for any help they can get.
Do you find that, and I don't know if there's been enough experience out there yet, do you find that people who would either hire or ask a doula to be present are also under hospice care, or is that kind of mutually exclusive?
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, yes. It's, again, remember that the family's the caregiver, and so, you know, we want those, hospice comes in and manages the care. Doulas don't do anything as far as medications or anything of that nature. They are companions to the dying and to their loved ones. They know, they're educated on everything to look for, so they might be your eyes and ears, and they might say, you know, it might seem that Mom is in need of pain medicine, why don't we go check it out? Because again, sometimes people can be so stressed out that they're not really seeing what's in front of them. We also love the fact that doulas they don't have a time limit. They can make their own arrangements with a family. I had a doula in 24/7. We had somebody living with somebody who lived alone, and that was beautiful. They were rotating. So whereas, you know, again, for me being the hospice nurse, I had to manage my time, let's say. But doulas can say, I'll be here for the 8-hour shift, or and so it immediately puts an ease there. So we work in connection with hospice. Right. Most of them. We can come in earlier, but for the most part, yeah.
Very, very good. You know,
and Suzanne,
go ahead.
So I'm just wondering if there's people out there, viewers in need right now, or who are thinking, gee, this doula thing, it sounds like a great idea because me and my family are kind of strapped and we're living with our loved one and we don't really know what to say, or we're a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm wondering, how can they find a death doula? I mean, of course we can Google it, but is there any directory, or do you have any plans for that, or can you speak about the world of doulas a little bit? I know you're very connected in New York City, and yeah.
That's a great question. Now, for the ones that take the level 3, which is the certificate program, I have an End of Life Doula network. So that will be that way that families can reach doulas in their area, and also doulas can put their information up. So that's a great question. So if you visit my website, Suzanne B OBrien.com, that information for the network, they can contact me. Again, this is something that we're building up, and unfortunately only the level 3 certification doulas will be up on there, because they've taken the length of the course, they've taken exams, they've taken contact hours. So that's, you know, something that's being kind of in the works to get bigger and bigger. But it will be called the End of Life Doula Network, and that is exactly how people can find it, through the website.
Okay. Good. And the people who do the level, so the level 1 training is free, and it can be done online. Is that correct?
It's online.
Okay. And level 2.
And I also do them in communities. I go into communities as well.
Yeah, and you go into communities as well for level 1. Great. And then the level 2 training, I believe, is a 2-day workshop. Is that?
It's correct, and I call that the intensive caregiver, but it also gives 16 hours of contact hours towards the level 3. And what that does is it covers the medications used in end of life, it covers the top 10 end of life disease processes, so it really takes what we've done in level 1 and hones in, because one of the beautiful things that we can do is when we know a disease process, we can somewhat anticipate the path of the decline, and that will help us to put things in place for comfort for people. And so when we take those top 10, what we do is what we've learned in level 1, which is everything to do with end of life, we now say, well, somebody with maybe a breathing issue like COPD, let's apply that whole learning and take COPD. What do we know about that, and what do we know about how we can make that person comfortable? So it's an intensive caregiver, the level 2, but yet it is 16 hours towards the level 3 certificate program as well.
Very good. And just to take a second too, I wanted to put up one of the comments actually from a former guest. I hope I'm doing this right, Mist. And that is from Rachel Zeldin. I'm very excited that she's watching. And in fact, Rachel meet Suzanne, Suzanne meet Rachel, because Rachel runs a website called I'm Sorry to Hear. It's about funeral planning and making sure people are making informed choices. And they've just expanded to be able to include death doulas, so they were seeking doulas to add themselves to our marketplace. And I think that would be a great connect for you guys.
Thank you, Rachel. Definitely. And it is, people, you know, people need to know how to find you. But I will also say one of my main goals is really trying to get hospice to embrace these wonderful people that are doulas in their community. And right now I'm working with White Plains Hospice, and we're going to be doing something, because that is the community resource for end of life, the standard. And so if you call your hospice or you're on hospice and you say to them, do you know of any doulas? Like for our hospice, we would have aides, but we would know that they weren't employees and we weren't getting paid to refer them, but we knew they knew how to care for people who were end of life. So we would have a list of them and be able to put them in a home or give that to the family. I would love to see the same thing in communities for the doulas, that the hospices had a list of doulas that they recommended, and that people in their community could immediately call hospice and get a referral for a doula as well. That's the real goal.
And speaking of that, as a matter of fact, it looks like we just lost, actually, Misty, I hope you can come back in, because I think she just got bumped out by those Google gremlins, but she's a master at this, so we're going to hope she gets speaking of that, when you mentioned, you know, that the goal would be that someone could call a hospice and get connected to a doula. So hospices are mandated to offer volunteers,
Yes.
And you know, because volunteers, they're required that 5% of all patient hours have to be delivered by volunteers. Tell us a little bit about the differences between that kind of training, or where the overlap, or the more the merrier, I guess. Is that
great? It's a great question, Patty. I get asked this a lot. We love our hospice volunteers, and we just couldn't do the job without them. They're wonderful. However, because of the rules and regulations, they're limited to how much time and what they can and cannot do. And for us to allow to help a patient to the bathroom and to do a couple of the other things like the time frame, to allow if a block of time was so vital for the family and the caregiver that we had to do something additional to the already wonderful volunteers that work with hospice. So we don't have time restrictions, and we can help people to the bathroom. And those are things that are really important because it allows the caregiver to get a break. So again, we love our hospice volunteers, but unfortunately, they have to follow those regulations for the reimbursement. So we don't have a reimbursement where we don't have to be tied to that. We can be present and companions to this family. We can be there for 12 hours if that's what we agree upon with the family, which makes a huge difference at times.
Sure, sure. Are people finding, or are you finding when doulas are now kind of newly minted and out there in the marketplace, is there some kind of training to help them understand like the business side of putting themselves out there, or at least what to charge? Is that something that's negotiated again between them and the family?
They're independent contractors, but that whole level 3 certificate handles every kind of subject about starting your business, marketing. There is a press release that's given to you that you can implement for your town, your location, your media, that tells what end of life doulas are. There's a doula family agreement that was done by an attorney. There is the interview checklist. There is the doula comfort kit. If you really want to do this, then that level 3 certificate program, I think, probably has everything you could possibly think of to market yourself.
Really comprehensive, because I think many people who are drawn. Hi, Misty. We're glad you're back. You were gone for a while. Where did you go? Into the great abyss? We can't hear you. We can't hear you now.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We are. Very good. Very good.
I'm back. I don't know what happened, but it sounds like Suzanne had the opportunity to really talk about all the great things that you're doing. So that's good. Sorry I missed it, but I'm glad it was there for the viewers.
That's okay. We were kind of talking about the level 3. And on the website, there is, if you click on the tab level 3 certificate, it will show you the whole curriculum. So if anyone's just interested in browsing that, it will have every detail on what's involved in that program, which is great.
Okay, and is that
because, oops, sorry, I'm sorry, Mist. I think we're stepping over each other. My apologies. I just wanted to finish up and say that what's so great about that is I think many people who are attracted to this kind of work are very heart-centered, may not be entrepreneurial. So if you're able to give them kind of a blueprint for what they need to do, that's amazing training.
Sure, and if I can just expand, because you did ask about the financial part of it, it's, again, you're an independent contractor, but what I tend to base it on is what is the average for maybe like the higher end of a home health aide in that state or location. But then if you have anything extra, like there are people who do hands-on healing or massage therapy, and so that could add a little bit of a different kind of monetary value. I do ask that doulas work with families, and they do. And all of us as well, if there's a family, sometimes people don't have resources. If there's a family that we can all donate a few hours to help them through this, we're called to do that. So I asked, and that's why I donate the level 1 as well, because I'm saying I'm going to train you, and so I'm going to ask you then to pay that forward when the time comes. And we do that with doulas as well. Work with families, and again, if it doesn't come from over here, then you get it from over here. This is about a heart-centered, loving, trying to help one another connection, and it actually all works out all the time. So thank you, thank you, universe. Yeah.
Yeah, very
That's
good.
great.
And this, I might have missed this part, but the level 3 is available right now in New York City, and that's a
Oh, yeah.
hands-on go, like you physically go to a room to be trained. Is that correct?
Well, you're not going to go, you are going to do contact hours, but you're not going to be in the training. I'm not going to take you into a room with a person at that moment. You need to be trained first. So there is every.
Yes. I guess I was wondering it's not online. That's the
There
sorry.
are ways that you can do it online because, you know, beautifully enough, I've had calls from all over the world, which actually prompted the online membership. So I do live coaching and I do work with people on Skype. So you can do it that way, and I have all the materials and the videos in a membership site, but I love live. So I do have this center opening May 1st that every month we'll be doing a training. And you'll do that weekend-long training, but then you continue on studying with your classroom and with me coaching you. It takes about 9 months total for the level 3. Yeah.
Perfect.
Full time.
And commit.
They do it on the weekend and then finish online. That's really exciting.
It is
Really good
really great.
stuff.
You know, I've had so many calls from people who are so wanting to do this and passionate about it, and our lives are so full. And so I just had a woman I was talking to last night, and she said, I really want to do this weekend. I'm doing one in New York City. And she said, but I can't do Saturday. Can I come on Sunday? And I said, well, let's just take a minute because I want this to be enjoyable to you and to me. So I didn't want her to cram and have to do the online level 1 and then come in Sunday, even though she goes, I'm so excited to do this. I want to do this. And we talked about it a little bit, and she could have the option, but she's going to do the at the center, and it's going to just be, I want it to be positive, and I want people to really be absorbing the information. And there's a lot of information, and it's really fantastic, but again, I always want this to be a positive experience for everyone. So the option, there's all kinds of options of learning on your own time frame is what you were alluding to, Misty, that you know you can take 9 months to do your hours and to get it done, or you could finish it in 7 if that's what you wanted to do. So
Great.
Wow, that's great.
Missy, go ahead.
You go ahead. Well, I was just thinking we're coming up to time, and it's been a great conversation, but we didn't mention at the beginning of the show, we have our Death Book Club going on, and so before we end, Patty, I would like to stay true to our Death Book Club call and just spend a few minutes talking about The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by Annie Kagan. But before we do that, Suzanne, is there anything else your heart is calling to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I just would like to really say that life is a gift, and every day is an opportunity for growth, no matter what happened yesterday. And trying to live mindfully, and I practice this, and I try myself. I'm trying to learn as well, but yesterday happened. We don't know what tomorrow's going to lead, so we want to live in the moment, mindful. And I want you to know that this training level 1 is a global outreach, so please share this with your friends, colleagues, anyone who feels that they want to take it. It is free. We will find a way to get it to your community or take it online, and magic happens. And if you even want to do the certificate training, yet money is an issue, I always make accommodations in sliding scale. So please contact me and we'll work anything out.
That's exciting. And also, I wanted to just, if you could say one more time where people can find out about it, your website.
Yes, thank you. Suzanne, which is Suzanne, B as in butterfly, O'Brien, OBRIEN.com. So that's Suzanne B OBrien.com, and it has all the contact information there. And I'd love to hear from you.
Very, very good. Well, don't go away, because I wanted to also, before we take those next couple minutes, I wanted to do a shout out to some of our guests, Misty. There's some familiar viewers and faces, and I love that. We've got, of course, Rachel Zeldin tuned in. We've got Joan Rolston Pole, or Full. I'm very sorry if I did not say your name correctly, but we're thrilled that you're here. And Jamal. And, of course, Julie Sager-Nierenberg. She is just one of our greatest supporters. I love all of her comments, and she's a great writer too. She was also one of our guests on the show. And Rain Dowell, thank you so much. She also said she had not heard she'd heard of birth doulas, but not death doulas. So she's pretty inspired, and she shared that.
Thank you.
And there you are, Misty. And we've just had a really nice group of people tuning in, and a lot of other people who have said they would. Mark Davenport had a conflict with tango lessons, which I can't believe, the tango lessons. So I said maybe we can combine and do tango with deaf a little. I think that would work. Okay. Anyway, just a great show and great information, and stick around because we do want to talk about this book. Go ahead, Misty.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to mention a few more names. These are people who are interested in our show and who follow us, and we're really spreading the word. So that's Ray, Jean, Miran, Carolyn, Blaine, Abid, Jim Sharp, John Jerkowicz, Molly Youngblood Geiger, Sudesh. We have people from all over. It's really wonderful. Allison, Diana, Real Diaz, RD, Sharangadi, Charles, Alberto, Jeremy, Marcus. Marcus has been with us since the very beginning. Thank you for your continued support, Marcus. Kristen, and I think you mentioned the others, Rain and Scott, who've also been with us, helping us out and since the